What if I told you your upper traps aren't the problem? They're a symptom of the underlying true root cause, which is why stretching, foam rolling, and massaging that tension out doesn't last, and it's not giving you long-term relief. I find it very unfortunate and frustrating that the fitness and rehab industry has this obsession with blaming muscles for everything that's wrong in the body. If you have poor posture, it's your hip flexors, your pecs, your lats, your upper traps are too tight. If you lack shoulder range of motion, your upper traps are too tight. If you have neck pain, your upper traps are too tight. And the list goes on. But in reality, the upper traps are an absolutely essential muscle for creating what we call upward rotation of the scapula right here. They work with your serratus anterior and your low traps to create that nice upward rotation without the scapula falling off the rib cage or some other compensatory action happening. But the problem is people feel their upper traps take over or be overactive because they're in a bad position to start in the first place. Many of these times people do actually have some degree of forward head posture. Now what happens is because the upper traps do attach on the scapula and the collarbone, both of these things are going to be elevated and pulled forward and up when I'm in this position, which means that my sternum is in a depressed position of internal rotation. And this is causing my upper trap to have a lot of stress on it. When I breathe in, normally what should happen is I should get some expansion of my chest, which will allow me to get a little bit taller within my posture naturally. But if I have these depressed ribs and my upper traps are pulled forward, then of course they're gonna have some tension. And of course you're not going to have a great ability to get more upward rotation. You're already starting in some degree of upward rotation. Therefore, the first step is we want to create expansion of our front rib cage, be able to get these ribs to open up. And that is a key factor for getting your upper traps in a better position. And that is not the same thing as trying to stretch out your chest. This is a different intention that leads to better, longer lasting results. Because wouldn't you rather have thousands of repetition of breaths per day opening this space, or would you rather just stretch it out for a couple of minutes every day and hope for the best? What we're going to do to start is get in obviously a seated position where we have our hips and knees bent at about a 90-degree angle and our feet are flat on the floor. We're going to feel our sit bones evenly on both sides, and if we're doing that, our pelvis is in a good position. Now, making sure our head is stacked on top of our rib cage and pelvis, we're going to make sure that the desk height, or whatever we're using here, is allowing us to have about a 60-degree angle of our humerus relative to our trunk here. 60 degrees or less of this angle right here is what we're looking for. And then we're going to get our elbows wide enough so that way we can get contact with our inner medial elbow, this bone right here, on that table or desk or whatever we're using there. So the width you go will depend on the range of motion available to you. So your hands are going to form about this sort of a shape right there. Now all we're going to do is slightly push the rib cage back and protract the shoulders without pushing the head forward like that. So I want to make sure we stay stacked and the ribs are just going back a little bit. And then you're going to maintain that position as you breathe through it, just like any other drill. Exhale through your mouth softly, about 5 to 10 seconds. And then you're going to feel a little bit of side abs engage, not your six pack. If you exhale softly, it'll be more of your side abs. And then maintain that about 2 out of 10 as you inhale through your nose, nice and chill. The key is, can you maintain this stacked head over your rib cage, over your pelvis, without depressing your sternum and shoving your head forward? That's the biggest common mistake you're gonna see on this exercise. So Trevor, if you show them what happens with that, that's not what we want. So I wanna make sure we're nice and upright and tall, feeling our sit bones, and just a little bit of protraction, pushing the ribs back right there, feeling those inner elbows. Now for this, you're gonna need a really light tube band. Nothing crazy whatsoever. It needs to be pretty much as light as you can get because we don't need to create a lot of excessive muscular tension here. I'm also going to make sure that I'm gonna get a nice position of my cervical spine in my head, and I can keep my chest open as well. So neck position is key for that. I'm going to take a towel, roll it up just enough so that way when I lay back on it, I feel like my head is being nice and supported and I can relax comfortably here. If I were to have it too thick, then I would be in a position where my head is being shoved back. I need to be in a position where I feel like my chin is pointing straight up at the ceiling. It's also not too low like this. Now for this first one, what you're gonna do is grab slightly wider than shoulder width and then just pull your shoulders down at about a 45-degree angle. So if this was 90 degrees and this is 0 degrees, you're gonna be right about there. And then from here, you're just gonna slightly pull the band apart until you feel about a 2 out of 10 engagement of the muscles on the back side of your shoulder blade. And you're gonna breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Now this is key because a full exhale will allow you to get a relatively full inhale. What I mean by that is if I just breathe shallow, I'm not going to be getting full chest wall expansion. So I need to exhale fully, nice and soft with a big open mouth until I feel a little bit of side ab tension. And then I'm going to keep a slight bit of side ab tension as I very gently inhale through my nose. And I should never feel my neck when I inhale through my nose. It should be very, very relaxed, but for about 3 to 6 seconds. And if I do that well, I'm going to feel a simultaneous rise of my chest and also my lower belly as well. Then what we need to do is train better scapulohumeral rhythm, which means that as the humerus moves, the scapula moves according and in relation to that. Now the keys for this are making sure that we can keep our head stacked over our rib cage, stacked over our pelvis. If we're starting in this position or too extended, we're not going to get the movement at the shoulder we're looking for there. And the other thing we need to do is work that overhead range in what we call the scapular plane. This is the healthiest range of motion for us to go in that allows for that nice scapulohumeral rhythm with the muscles like the upper traps, like the low traps, like the serratus anterior working concurrently together in a healthy way. That would be about 20 to 30 degrees out from directly midline. So right about there is what we would call the scapular plane. Now this is a great start and should give you some immediate benefits. But if you're looking for more of a comprehensive approach that addresses very common issues of the rib cage, the shoulder, and the arm, then you can check out my shoulder health program. This shoulder health program also takes into account the entire body, such as the role of the pelvis. Because if the pelvis is in a crappy position, that is going to put my rib cage in a compromised position. So we need to make sure we're addressing everything. My shoulder health program has that already built in. Now for this, we're going to be in that same position as the first exercise, but we're going to do it one side at a time. Now grab the band and make sure it doesn't have too much or too little slack on it. Right here is about right. Hold that side down by the same side. Now you're going to start with a thumbs down grip here, and you're going to pretend like you're drawing a sword out of a sheath, like you're a knight. And you're going to go overhead, keeping a very slight bend in your elbow until your thumb is pointing down at the ground there, to the extent that's relatively reasonable for you. Now make sure you're not going all the way back and a little early, because that will keep you in more of that scapular plane. And breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Nice and relaxed here for about 5 slow breaths. Make sure when you breathe in, you're not feeling any neck tension whatsoever. Because if you do, you are going to feed that mechanism of your head being pulled forward by your neck. So it looks like this. Down here, up to there, in through my nose, out through my mouth. Okay, this last one is a little bit more of an advanced progression with load. I have a cable machine attached to the lowest that it can go with a handle right here. I have a bench where I can sit, about a 90-degree bend at both my knees and my hips. I'm gonna make sure that my head is stacked over my rib cage and my pelvis. So I'm going to sit tall, feeling my sit bones evenly on both sides. And then I'm gonna exhale long enough to feel my rib cage come down, but not so much to where I feel like I'm going to slouch. So it looks like this. Sit bones, right there. Now, I'm going to do thumbs up grip right here and stay in the scapular plane as I go up, stopping the movement once I feel like my ribs are going to flare. That's what this hand is for, right here, to make sure that I don't feel any pressure like this at all. Because if I go too high, that's what I'm going to feel. So nice and controlled, out in that scapular plane to right about there, and then I'm gonna come back controlling that tempo, using a nice light weight and I should feel those muscles working on the backside of my shoulder, but also I should feel a little bit of upper trap as well, and that's totally fine and healthy. I recommend doing one side at a time because if you do more than that, you're gonna have the tendency to be a little bit asymmetrical in many cases, and you can really focus on dialing it in really well if you do one side at a time. I recommend 3 sets of about 8 to 12 reps with a pretty light weight here.